Welcome, you're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna. All is well and is getting better. That was the big message coming in from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman after a crucial meet with private sector banks today. The purpose of the meet was to get a sense of the economy from these top bankers and give them a peek into the huge loan program that government banks will undertake. Many of them said they were keen to undertake it as well. But the big takeaway, undoubtedly, was the FM statement that demand was not an issue and would pick up post-festive season. Listen in.
So the message I get from this meeting today is consumption is happening. And once probably the 15 days of this period, which is in many states considered not the time for going and purchasing the Pitru Paksh, post which the festive season starts, from what has emerged today, I feel demand will get back and motivate our economy to move at a faster rate, in which case the coming half year things will have to look up and pep up every other sector, even if there are one or two sectors in which there may be some stress.
So if there's no demand problem, then why are people not buying even biscuits? The latest data by research agency Nielsen shows rural consumption in FMCG slowing down to 10% in the second quarter of this year. Rural growth is in fact slowing much faster than urban growth at double the rate. Biscuits in particular are doing poorly with the lowest value growth in 2 years as per this data. So what's the true picture? Is there low demand because of poor sentiment, as was indicated in what the finance minister said, although she was speaking in the context of passenger sales of cars? Or is it poor incomes which is leading to a broader dampening of demand and sentiment? To speak more on this, I'm joined now by Dr. S.K. Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor of the State Bank of India. I'll be speaking in a bit to R. Jagannathan. Y.K. Alag, eminent economist, is speaking with us as well. And I'm also speaking with Professor Abhijit Sen, top economist. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Alag, let me come to you first and what you make of the rural consumption story. Great to have you on the show. I know you're the foremost voice on rural consumption and the economy in rural area. And there are conflicting pictures right now because monsoons have been good, MSP prices have been hiked. But why are people not even buying biscuits, not even 5 rupee packets?
Well, there was, as you know, delayed rainfall. And the Kharif rainfall started later. Now, even though the rains were made up later on, but the sowing decisions of the farmer are affected by early rainfall. Now, we are happy that, she or he is not growing paddy, but is growing oil seeds and other things. But the farmer thinks that there will be a higher rate of return by growing paddy. And from all projections, Kharif output, the first projections by the Ministry of Agriculture have been released this week, is going to be lower than last year as far as grains are concerned. Yes, there is going to be some increase in oil seeds and pulses, but this delayed monsoon is definitely going to affect Kharif output and rural incomes. Now, one was hoping that the budget did not give much hope, but later on the two press conferences that the FM took, one was hoping that there would be a stimulus. But instead what she has said is there has been some more money given for housing, and that will most certainly affect output, demand. But on the other hand, the big stimulus is not there. She has said that we are asking the public sector to spend more. I've been discussing that with a former public sector czar, and he said, sir, these kinds of admonitions we can't take into account because when the audit comes, then they say, why did you make this investment? If the FM had given us money, then that's a different issue. But the stimulus in that sense is not there. What you have is some reform packages, and I don't think that by itself is enough of a stimulus to take care of the delayed rainfall and the fact that the economy as a whole has slowed down. Now, you know, Fitch has said this, CLSA has said this, Rathin Roy and others were saying it, so then we sacked them and we have new members of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council.
Yeah.
It's not advisable to shoot the postman. I think we should recognize that there has been a slowing down of the economy and that needs a stimulus. Now the stimulus can only come in November, which means that since there are normally time lags of 4 to 6 months, really the economy will pick up only towards the end of the first quarter next year.
Okay. Professor Abhijit Sen, how do you see the picture panning out? And we played out a small snippet of what the Finance Minister said just a short while ago, but she was quite emphatic, saying that the news that she's heard from private sector bankers was like a tonic, that they're saying that we have the liquidity, as soon as we see the demand, we will lend. But is there a difference between whatever demand they see, they're saying, for bank loans and actual consumption? And can we assume that people will take more loans if even basic consumption is not visible right now?
See, look here, I think the basic point which is at issue is what is the nature of what is holding back growth and what is depressing our growth rate. I believe, as I think the world at large recognizes, is that it is a lack of demand. On the demand side, nothing. Investment, exports, private, private consumption now, none of them are pushing up demand. They're all down. Now, when the Finance Minister comes along and says that demand is not the issue, is she saying that it's only a supply side issue? Now, I'm a bit disappointed with what Professor Alag said just now. He pointed at the rainfall, and I agree with him 100%. The Kharif rainfall this year was so bad in June and July and August it was middling, September it was fantastic, that it's not going to add to Kharif output. It may add to Rabi output. But the point is that it's not a supply side problem. The problem we are seeing, to me, still remains a demand side problem. And that's where the FM is making her point. Now, the banks might have advised her that we are willing to lend. We don't have a problem of lending. Obviously, they don't. In fact, they will have more money to lend, and they would be wanting to lend if, as a result of the corporation tax cuts, the corporates actually pay back their old loans earlier. So, the issue is one of whether it's a demand problem or a supply problem. Second, whether the banking sector is going to actually gain if its assets, which are loans, are repaid early. Normally that doesn't happen. They would be willing to lend. The question is, why would people want to borrow? And will they be able to borrow? The corporate sector won't want to borrow. As far as the farming sector is concerned, the reason they can't borrow is not because banks don't have money. It's because they are excluded from borrowing because they've got past unpaid loans. So there are issues here which are deeper, which cannot be summed up by statements which in economics are fundamental. Is it a supply problem? Fundamentally. Is it a demand problem?
Right.
Fundamentally. And cures depend on that. And none of this takes into account that our rural economy is fundamentally a cash economy. And ever since demonetization, that cash economy has gone into a tumble. And anything, like any bad event, makes it tremble in that downward slide.
Okay. Let me get in a view from R. Jagannathan on some of the comments that Abhijit Sen and YK Alag have made, and the idea is to get a clear picture of what's really going on, Mr. Jagannathan, because the finance minister quoting private sector banks sounded positive, was hoping, of course, as we all do, that festive demand will pick up. But is there a deeper problem that we're not seeing? I mean, we're trying to wrap our heads around why people are not buying small biscuit packets. And if they're not, are they going to have the appetite for loans?
See, I think I agree with the panelists that right now it is not a supply side problem, but it's a demand side problem. But however, supply often tends to create its own demand. So when you have a large amount of profits coming into the corporate sector because of the lower tax rates, what they can do is they can stimulate demand by cutting prices. If you can see, the auto companies have started doing that, and many other people are doing that. People are giving 2-for-1 offers and various things. So I think there will be a slow cycle of demand revival that will happen. Let's also not forget, though the rural sector is facing some amount of demand problem, the fact is you already had 3 rounds of the PM Kisan being paid up. Around 6,000 rupees have been paid into rural accounts, and it's been extended to all farmers. Secondly, rural wages have slowly started moving up. So cash is started building up into the rural economy, and that demand will start coming into it once the next harvest is done and you had a fairly decent monsoon. So I would expect that a lot of the rural demand will start happening from around November onwards, October, November, which is normally what happens. The most thing I disagree with Professor Sen that the demonetization and the cash economy is a problem. The economy has been fully remonetized. It is more an issue about whether money has reached some people's pockets in the last few months because of the slowdown, and people are holding back because of a sense of despondency that there may be something bigger, so let me hold back. What I would want to spend today, I will wait and see if something gets better. Like say people are delaying home purchases, people are delaying car purchases on the assumption that the prices may fall further. So because of this business of giving, delivering revival doses in installments weekly, people may be waiting, say, what if something better comes up next week or the week after that, and things like that. So I think that somewhere the FM has to say, okay, this is it. I've done all my bit. Now you guys do a bit. I think then you will see that people will start taking decisions on purchases. So it's not a demand side problem ultimately, but it will start reviving slowly. But it's not going to suddenly jerk up and say, oh, the demand is back to where it was about 18 months ago. It won't happen. And I think we should stop talking about this demonetization. It happened more than 3 years ago, for God's sake. There is
Jaggi, if you can hear me, my point is that you are taking the angle that this is a problem with sentiment.
Yes.
But how does sentiment play into such small ticket purchases like biscuits? I'm coming back to biscuits because we have Nielsen data today. We've spoken to Parle today. And there it's looking bad. My point, I can understand if you're saying someone doesn't want to buy a car right now because they're waiting for lower rates, someone doesn't want to take on a new home loan, they're waiting for everyone to pick up. But 5 rupees ka biscuit?
Yeah, I will tell you what is happening. I can tell you that poverty is not as bad as it was earlier. In the UPA period, if you notice, there was no problem about cereal prices. People were moving towards protein-based products, and therefore the demand and food demand has shifted upwards towards higher value, high protein items. The same thing is now happening at the bottom end of the biscuits market. If you look at it, demand has started shifting to higher quality and higher value biscuits. It is not at the bottom end where Parle operates, which is not Parle G and glucose, those kind of things. I think there is a kind of fundamental demand shift because people are no longer suffering from extreme poverty where they have to buy a 5 rupee biscuit
Okay.
packet, people are trading up.
No, but they're not buying. The total segment has seen a massive drop in volume growth. I want to get SK Ghosh and I want to welcome him. Mr. Ghosh, I don't know if you managed to catch the beginning of this conversation, but two things we're talking about. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, after speaking with private sector banks, says it seems like all is well, demand is there, will pick up in the second half. We've had data on biscuits today which shows that it's quite a sharp fall. You have argued before in one of your eco-wrap reports that biscuit fall may be because people are making healthier choices. But then how would you explain volume growth dropping overall? Is it important for us to identify whether this demand drop is a factor of sentiment or just lower income?
No, I think it's a factor of both, but regarding the FMCG sector, specifically biscuits, I think that there is indeed a structural change which has been happening across industry. FMCG industry is one of them, the auto industry is also one of them, and but my sense is that apart from the structural changes which is happening across industries, which is basically because of change in the people's preferences and other things, I think there is also a demand factor playing over here. And that is actually leading to and depressed sentiments. For example, as of now, the packages which has been announced by the FM last week, the corporate package, I think that has been able to arrest the downward movement in the markets and improve the overall sentiments. But the point is that the measures which have been taken are all long term in nature. These are going to boost public investment, and but the point is that any short term revival which we may be looking up in terms of and park up in the GDP growth from the 5%, that may take a little bit amount of time. But my sense is that, I mean, whatever is being done by the government, that is incremental and baby steps in nature, and hopefully, I mean, given the fact that the monsoon has been good, there has been plentiful of rainfall, possibly now there is an expectations that demand could come back strongly into the system, because there is one thing which we are all hopeful about, because if you look into the data, there has been a lot of destocking, because the players have actually run down their inventory levels significantly in the last couple of months in an anticipation, because they were not doing any production because there was no demand. And there has been anecdotal evidences which suggest that whenever there has been a big drop in this, as it happened in GST times, when there has been a destocking, when the demand comes back, that actually comes back at a sharper pace. But the point now is that whether that will come back at a sharper pace in the second half or not, so that's a point which we need to debate. But as of now, today, it seems that there has been a slight bit of pickup, for example, in the card registration sales in the first 20 days of September, which has shown a pickup, and hopefully the festive season could bring in some amount of cheer.
Okay, let me come back to Professor Y.K. Alag, and thank you for your patience. You've heard everyone's comments and some of them responding to what you said. Do you buy this argument that the drop in demand is a function of sentiment, will pick up after festive season? Believe you, everyone hopes it does. But I think it's important to understand what exactly we're dealing with, because supply side measures will only go that far if basic demand is this dampened.
No, I think there is no question that demand has been constrained. When I talked about rural rainfall, Abhijit said he was a bit disappointed. My point that I was making was that essentially that affects rural incomes. You are happy because the farmer is growing more oil seeds or pulses, but he or she is unhappy that they are not growing paddy, which is where they get the income from. And that fall in income leads to a consumption problem. So to expect, in other words, the excess rainfall towards the end of the monsoon has not been able to take care of that effect. And listen, the Kharif figures are in, and that really means that rural income has not gone up this year, not by 4%. It has not even gone up by, in fact, production is less than last year. There's a very small increase. So we are basically talking about rural income and consumption. That is the point. Now, whether there's going to be a pickup immediately, I really don't think so. I think what we are doing for housing will probably have some impact. Now remember that the festive season, you should be comparing it with the festive season last year. But the festival season will be gone after the Pitri Paksh. So I don't think we should play on the Pitri Paksh and Diwali. That's not the issue. If you want to compare Diwali this year, you have to compare it with Diwali last year.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what's going to happen? I don't see the stimulus in that sense. Yes, you've done something for housing, and the question is not, the banks are willing to lend, so giving them more money really doesn't help. So the question really is, are you going to spend, and it's not only me, I mean, the Deputy Chairman of Niti Aayog has been saying this.
Yeah.
Ratin Roy said it. Now you don't like them, so you shoot the postman. But the problem is demand, and one was expecting a stimulus. It didn't come in the budget.
Yeah.
One was expecting it later. Instead, we got lectures on structural reform. And as one of the panelists said, these are things which are going to make an impact over maybe the next 2 years, but we are talking about the next 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
I don't see the economy responding in that big way during the next few months.
Okay, let's hope for the best, but let's also have a realistic picture of where we are. I want to thank all of you for joining me today and giving us a divergence of views, some of the best voices on economy right here on your screen. But let's recognize what the true picture is. Let's also recognize that we've seen supply side measures right now. So the government essentially trying to make sure that there's more money in the economy, more credit available for those who want to take loans, more profits for business so they can invest more. Now, perhaps going forward, we will see measures on the demand side, putting more money in your and my hands, putting more money in the farmer's hands so we can spend more. The more you spend, the faster the economy will pick up. And we should feel like it's safe to spend more. On that note, I will take a very, very short break over here. But when we come back, we're following up a story that the India Development Debate has been tracking from day one. I'm glad to see that other channels have jumped on now. But we're back on the Punjab Maharashtra bank bust. 10,000 rupees is the new limit. It's been increased after an outrage from customers and of course the media following up. But is that enough? Is it not time to ask what about the political nexus between politicians and these cooperative banks? Kirit Sumaya is joining me next to take some of those tough questions. Stay tuned.